The palace of the Veyari Empire was made of silver stone and glowing crystals that shined like captured starlight. Inside, the three princesses, Leora, Sarai, and Myra, walked together through the long golden hallways. Their steps echoed softly, but their hearts were heavy with fear. For days, all they could think about was the same subject: the human. No one in the Empire had ever seen a human before. They were a species from a distant blue planet called Earth, newly arrived in the galaxy. Rumors traveled faster than light, and none of those rumors were kind. The stories said that humans were predators, not like the gentle grass-feeding species of the Veyari. Humans, it was whispered, survived by hunting and eating the flesh of other creatures. They were called Carnivorous, with a mix of disgust and dread. Princess Leora, the eldest, held herself with calm dignity, though her golden eyes betrayed unease. "They say he can smell fear," she whispered to her sisters as they reached the crystal garden. "That his kind stalk prey for hours, never giving up the chase." Princess Sarai, the second-born, shivered and pulled her long blue cloak tighter around her. "I heard more," she replied nervously. "The scholars said humans have teeth sharp enough to tear through bone, and they chew slowly." Myra, the youngest, had always been curious, but also the most anxious. Her small voice trembled as she spoke. "If all that is true, then why would Father invite one here? Why must we meet him? What if he eats us?" Their fears were not only personal. Across the empire, merchants spoke of strange human ships seen crossing trade routes. Diplomats carried warnings about Earth's people. Every tale painted humans as dangerous predators who could not be trusted. Some even claimed humans enjoyed violence for sport. The word carnivorous spread like fire, shaping the alien imagination into something monstrous. The sisters gathered under the glowing branches of a crystal tree. The lights reflected off their jeweled crowns, but the sparkle did not ease their minds. Leora tried to be strong for her younger sisters. "We are princesses of the Veyari. We must show courage. If Father asks us to greet this human, then we shall." Her voice was steady, though her heart beat fast. Sarai shook her head. "Courage? When the stories say he devours even his enemies? Alive? How does one show courage when facing a creature like that?" Myra's wings twitched nervously. "Maybe he doesn't look so frightening. Maybe he looks weak. But that makes him even worse. A fragile predator is the deadliest kind." The sisters fell silent, thinking about this. In Veyari culture, predators were feared above all else. Their empire had been built on harmony with nature, and their people were grazers who lived peacefully. To them, a creature that could kill for survival was both unnatural and terrifying. Later that evening, the Grand Council of the palace gathered. The emperor, the princess's father, stood tall in his silver robes. His voice carried authority as he announced to all present, "Tomorrow we welcome the human ambassador from Earth. He comes in peace, seeking friendship with our empire. My daughters shall attend this meeting, for they must learn what it means to lead in the age of stars." The court erupted into whispers. Some nobles nodded with curiosity, others frowned with open distrust. But the princesses felt only dread. In their private chamber, Sarai turned to her sisters with wide eyes. "Did you hear, Father? We must be there. We must stand before this human." Leora nodded slowly. "We will stand beside him. But we must be careful. Every gesture, every word, if he is truly dangerous, we cannot show weakness." Myra hugged her pillow tightly. "What if we make a mistake? What if he sees us as prey?" That night, none of them slept well. Leora stayed awake, thinking about her duty. Sarai dreamed of sharp white teeth chasing her down endless halls. Myra cried quietly, though she tried to hide it. When dawn came, the palace prepared for the historic meeting. Flags of silver and blue were hung across the walls. A great hall was prepared with crystal seats and glowing lanterns. Guards in polished armor stood ready, holding energy spears that hummed with power. Everyone was tense, for today would decide whether humans were friends or monsters. The three princesses dressed in ceremonial gowns, their crowns polished bright. But beneath the silk and jewels, their stomachs twisted with fear. As they walked toward the great hall, Sarai whispered, "Do you hear it? The silence? Even the palace feels afraid." Leora clenched her fists. "Remember, we are Veyari royalty. Whatever he is, we must stand proud." The giant crystal doors opened. The princesses stepped inside. At the far end of the hall stood the human. He was taller than they expected, with broad shoulders but a strangely fragile form compared to the armored guards. His skin was pale, his hair short and dark. He wore a simple uniform of black and silver with no weapons, yet his eyes, deep and sharp, made their hearts pound. The sisters froze for a moment. He looked nothing like the monsters of their nightmares. But somehow, that was worse, because a predator that did not look like one was far more dangerous. The human bowed slightly in greeting. "It is an honor to meet you," he said through the translator device. His voice was calm, almost gentle. The three princesses exchanged fearful glances. The dreaded meeting had begun. The great hall of the Veyari palace was silent, heavy with tension. Rows of nobles sat on crystal benches, their jeweled robes glowing faintly under the lantern light. Guards lined the walls, their spears humming softly with restrained energy. At the far end of the hall, beneath the great star-shaped window, stood the human. The princesses walked slowly toward their seats beside the emperor, their footsteps echoing across the polished floor. Every eye in the chamber followed them. Every whisper was about the same thing. The alien predator who stood so calmly, as if the whole galaxy were not watching him. Leora, the eldest princess, forced her expression into calm dignity. Her heart raced, but her voice stayed steady as she leaned toward her sisters. "Do not look away," she whispered. "Predators sense weakness." Sarai swallowed hard. She wanted to be brave, but her hands trembled as she adjusted her long, blue cloak. Her mind replayed every rumor she had ever heard. Teeth sharp as blades, eyes that could see in darkness, instincts that never tired of hunting. Myra, the youngest, almost hid behind her sisters. Her wings twitched nervously as she peered at the human. He was not drooling with hunger, nor snarling with rage. That only made her more frightened. Monsters should look like monsters, but this one, he looked ordinary. The emperor raised his hand, and the hall grew quiet. "People of the Veyari Empire," his voice thundered, "today we witness a moment that may shape the future of our stars. Before us stands a being from the distant planet called Earth. He comes not as an enemy, but as an ambassador of peace." Somebody. Human stepped forward. His movements were calm, but each step echoed loudly in the princesses' minds. He bowed slightly, his hands empty to show he carried no weapon. "My name is Daniel Carter," the translator device repeated in the Veyari tongue. His real voice carried beneath it, softer but firm. "I thank you for welcoming me into your great hall. I come in friendship." The nobles whispered again. His voice was not harsh. His words were not threats. Yet the stories still clung to, their minds like shadows. Could this creature truly be harmless? Leora narrowed her eyes, studying him. His body seemed fragile compared to the towering armored guards. No claws, no fangs. But she remembered her tutor's words. "The smallest predator may be the most cunning." The emperor gestured toward his daughters. "These are my heirs, Princess. Leora, Princess Sarai, and Princess Myra. They will one day lead our empire. They must learn the truth of humanity with their own eyes." Daniel turned toward the sisters. He gave a polite nod, his lips curving into what humans called a smile. The translator added no words, but the gesture itself was strange. Sarai leaned closer to Leora, whispering quickly, "What is that? Is he baring his teeth at us? Is it a threat?" Leora stiffened. "Stay calm. Do not let him see fear." Daniel, noticing their discomfort, lowered his smile slightly, but he did not look offended. He folded his hands together in a gesture of respect. The Emperor spoke again. "Human ambassador, there are many who fear your kind. They say your people are carnivorous." He let the word linger, heavy and sharp. "They say you survive by consuming the flesh of others. What answer do you give?" The hall went silent. Every noble leaned forward. The princesses froze. Daniel's eyes flicked between them, thoughtful. Then he spoke, calm but clear. "Yes, my people are omnivores. We eat many things, plants, fruits, grains, and also meat. But do not mistake survival for cruelty. We do not hunt other people. We do not eat our allies. We build bonds, trade, and share knowledge." The translator's words echoed across the hall, but they did little to ease the unease. The nobles whispered louder now, some horrified, others curious. Myra's small voice trembled as she leaned toward her sisters. "He admits it. He truly does eat flesh." Sarai shivered. Then the rumors were true. But Leora kept her gaze steady, searching for meaning in the human's eyes. "And yet," she whispered softly, "he does not seem ashamed. He speaks as if it is natural." The Emperor lifted his hand again, silencing the hall. "And what of your strength, human? They say your kind fights even without armor, that you wrestle with nature itself and bend it to your will." Daniel did not boast. He nodded slightly. "It is true. My people are fragile compared to many in this galaxy. Our skin is soft, our claws blunt, our teeth not the sharpest. Yet we survived. We learned to run far, to endure hunger and thirst, to make tools from stone and fire. We adapt, and in that we are strong." The princesses listened, confused. How could weakness make someone strong? Sarai's brow furrowed. "He admits his body is weak, but then says they survived anyway?" "How?" Leora's voice was low. "That is what makes them dangerous. To be fragile, yet survive. That means cleverness beyond measure." Daniel seemed to sense the fear in the room. He took another careful step forward, not threatening, but steady. "I did not come to frighten you. My people do not seek to rule your worlds or harm your people. We seek friendship, trade, and learning. We bring stories of our home, not weapons. I stand here unarmed, as proof of that." His words carried weight. The nobles whispered again, softer this time. Some seemed less afraid, others still suspicious. But the princesses could not shake their dread. When the Emperor ended the meeting, the hall slowly emptied. The human ambassador was escorted to his guest quarters. In their private chamber, the sisters gathered once more. Myra collapsed onto a crystal bench. "Did you see his eyes? They were so sharp, like he was studying every part of us. What if he was measuring us? Like prey?" Sarai wrapped her arms around herself. "And his smile. He showed his teeth. Even if it was polite, I could not help but feel it was a warning." Leora stood by the window, staring out at the stars. She spoke quietly, almost to herself. "He is not what I expected. He is not a monster, but that makes him more dangerous. A monster can be fought. A mystery cannot." The three sisters sat in silence, their thoughts heavy. Tomorrow they would be asked to spend more time with the human, to speak with him, to learn about his people. And though their father saw a path to peace, The princesses still saw only shadows of a predator cloaked in politeness. The dreaded first encounter was over. But their fear had only grown stronger. The morning after the dreaded meeting, the palace was alive with whispers. Every corner of the crystal halls echoed with rumors of the human. Servants repeated his words with fear, twisting them into darker shapes. Nobles argued whether he was truly harmless or hiding his fangs behind polite speech. For the three princesses, the night had been restless. They had lain awake, replaying every word Daniel had spoken. His calm voice, his strange gestures, the way his eyes had seemed to look deep into them. It had unsettled their hearts. Now, as the sun rose and painted the palace towers in silver light, they prepared to meet him again. The emperor had commanded that his daughters join the human for a small exchange of culture, so they might better understand his people. Leora straightened her crown as they walked together. Her golden eyes were serious. Remember, our duty is to learn. Do not let fear cloud your judgment. Sarai frowned, tugging at her long cloak. Easy for you to say. Every time he shows his teeth, I feel like prey in the forest. Myra stayed close to her sisters, her wings trembling slightly. Do you think he notices? Does he know we are afraid? Leora hesitated. Predators always notice. They entered the council chamber where the meeting would take place. The human was already there, standing beside a table covered with small objects from his world. When he saw them, he gave the same polite bow as before. Good morning, Daniel said, his translator repeating the words. He smiled faintly, but not too widely, as if he had already learned that his teeth made them uneasy. The princesses bowed in return, careful not to show hesitation. On the table before him lay strange items. A small glowing device, a sphere of blue and green patterns, and a thin stack of printed sheets. Daniel picked up the sphere first. This is Earth, he said. The sphere rotated slowly, showing wide oceans and green continents. It is our home, a world of many lands, many climates, and many peoples. The princesses leaned closer, curiosity mixing with fear. Sarai whispered, So much water. How can anyone live on such a world? Daniel heard her. He smiled gently. We learned to build ships to cross the seas, to fish from the waters, to grow crops on the land. We adapted. The translator spoke the words smoothly, but the princesses exchanged nervous looks. Fish from the waters? Myra whispered. He admits again. They catch living creatures to eat. Sarai's eyes widened. So the rumors are true. Leora folded her arms, keeping her voice calm. It is survival for them. But still, it confirms their predatory nature. Daniel then held up the thin sheets. These are stories written by my people. We share tales of courage, of love, of discovery. Through stories, we pass down wisdom. The translator repeated the words, but one phrase twisted strangely. The device spoke. We pass down blood. The princesses gasped. Myra nearly dropped her crown. Blood? She whispered harshly. He admits they pass blood between each other? Daniel looked confused. Is something wrong? He asked, noticing their alarm. Leora quickly straightened her face. No, nothing. But inside, her heart raced. The translator had made a mistake, yet the damage was done. The image of humans passing blood like a ritual spread fear in their minds. The human ambassador then made another gesture. He motioned toward the empty chairs. Please, sit with me, he said warmly. Let us share the table. The translator repeated, Sit so that I may consume at the table. The princesses froze in horror. Sarai clutched her cloak tightly. Myra nearly bolted from the room. He wants us at the table so he can eat us, Sarai whispered, panic rising in her voice. Leora forced herself to breathe slowly. Calm yourselves. It may be another mistake of the translator. Daniel noticed their pale faces. He frowned slightly, realizing something had gone wrong, but he did not know what. "Forgive me," he said carefully. "Perhaps my words sound strange, but I mean no harm." The translator thankfully repeated that sentence correctly, and the sisters relaxed a little, though the fear still lingered. Trying to repair the moment, Daniel placed another object on the table, a small glowing box. When he pressed a button, soft music filled the room. It was gentle and melodic, unlike anything the princesses had ever heard. Myra tilted her head, her fear fading slightly as the sound wrapped around her. "What is that?" she whispered. Daniel smiled again. "Music. It is the voice of the heart. Without words. My people create it for joy, for memory, for peace." The translator worked properly this time, and the sisters felt their hearts soften. The melody was strange, but it carried no threat. For a moment, they forgot their fear. But then Daniel closed his eyes and tapped the table in rhythm with the music. His fingers drummed softly, almost like claws on stone. The sound made Sarai tense again. "Claws," she whispered. "Even without weapons, he makes a sound like claws." Leora sighed quietly. "Not claws, just hands. Yet our fear paints them otherwise." After the exchange, the session ended. Daniel bowed again before leaving, escorted by the guards, the key. Sisters remained in the chamber, their thoughts heavy. Myra hugged her arms tightly. "Did you hear the mistakes? Passing blood, consume at the table. How can we trust him when his words twist into such horrors?" Sarai shook her head. Maybe they were not mistakes. Maybe his translator only revealed the truth behind his polite mask. Leora was silent for a long time, staring at the glowing sphere of earth still resting on the table. Finally, she spoke. "No, I think it is both. The words were mistakes, yes. But the truth is still there. Humans are not like us. They are predators. And even if he means no harm now, can such a nature ever be trusted?" The sisters walked slowly back to their private chamber. The music still echoed in their minds, beautiful yet unsettling. Each carried the same heavy thought: the human's smile, the human's words, the human's strange customs. Were they signs of friendship, or signs of danger cleverly hidden? The misunderstandings grew, and with them, so did the fear. The palace air was heavy the next morning. Rumors of the human's words spread quickly through the halls. Servants whispered of passing blood and consuming at the table. Nobles debated if the translator had failed or if the human had revealed his hidden hunger. The three princesses felt the weight of these whispers most of all. They had heard his calm voice, seen his polite smile, and yet their hearts could not forget the strange words that filled them with fear. Today, they were ordered to join him again, this time for a cultural exchange where both sides would share food. The idea alone made the sisters tremble. "Food," Myra whispered as she prepared her gown. Her hands shook as she pinned her silver crown. "What if his idea of food is us?" Sarai shivered and pulled her cloak tight. "What if he demands flesh at the table? What if this is how predators show dominance?" Leora remained quiet as she adjusted her ceremonial sash. She wanted to believe her father's judgment. She wanted to trust that the human meant no harm, but doubt gnawed at her thoughts like shadows she could not banish. When they entered the grand dining chamber, the scene before them only deepened their unease. A long crystal table stretched across the room, filled with trays of glowing fruits, sweet-smelling flowers, and soft breads baked by palace chefs. But beside these dishes stood smaller trays, prepared at Daniel's request. On them were strange foods, flatbreads, cooked grains, colorful vegetables, and, most shocking, small portions of cooked meat. Gasps echoed from the nobles gathered to watch. The word carnivorous hissed from their lips like a curse. Daniel, seated calmly at the center, rose politely as the princesses entered. "Thank you for joining me," he said through the translator. "Today I share my people's meals so that you may know us not only in words, but in the simple act of eating." The sisters exchanged horrified looks. Eating for the Veyari was sacred and peaceful. It was a time for harmony, never for fear. To share food with a predator felt like walking willingly into danger. Daniel picked up a piece of bread and broke it in half. "This," he explained, "is made from grain grown in the soil of earth. Simple, nourishing, and shared among families." He tasted it calmly, then offered the other half toward the princesses. Leora hesitated but forced herself to accept. The bread was soft and harmless, flavored with herbs. Nothing about it was threatening. Next, Daniel showed them a plate of fruits. Sweet, refreshing. A gift from the trees of my world. Myra's eyes widened. "Fruit?" she whispered. She dared to taste one piece. It was strange, but pleasant, sweet like honey. For a moment, her fear softened. But then came the final plate, the cooked meat. Daniel lifted a small piece, his voice steady. "And this, too, is part of our survival. Meat from animals we raise for food. We honor their lives by not wasting what they give." The hall erupted in whispers again. Nobles covered their mouths in shock. Some turned away in disgust. The princesses froze. Sarai whispered sharply, "He admits it without shame. He eats flesh as if it is normal." Daniel saw their alarm and set the plate down gently. His eyes softened. "Do not mistake this for cruelty. We are not monsters. We do not eat others like us. We do not hunt allies or friends. We eat as nature made us. Sometimes plants, sometimes meat. It is survival, not savagery." The translator spoke clearly this time. His words carried truth, but the fear in the room was hard to silence. Leora studied him closely. His calmness, his honesty, it confused her. Predators were supposed to hide, to deceive. Yet here he stood, speaking openly of what terrified them most. "Why tell us this?" she asked quietly. "Why admit the very thing that makes us fear you?" Daniel met her gaze. "Because peace cannot be built on lies. You deserve the truth, even if it frightens you. Only then can trust grow." The hall grew silent. The nobles stopped whispering, waiting for the princess's response. Sarai's hands trembled, but her voice was firm. "Perhaps, but how can we trust a species that survives by killing?" Daniel thought for a moment, then answered, "Look around your world. The animals that graze, the birds that sing, the insects that crawl. Do they not all live by taking something? Plants drink the soil. Animals eat plants. Others eat animals. Life feeds life. It is the way of all worlds. We are no different. We only learn to make choices about it." The sisters were stunned. They had never thought of it that way. To them, eating plants was natural, peaceful. But the humans' words made them question their simple beliefs. Myra whispered softly, "So it is. Part of the balance of nature?" Daniel nodded gently. "Yes. But we also choose kindness. We choose peace when we can. That is why I am here. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with open hands." The sincerity in his voice touched something, deep in them. For the first time, the fear in their hearts eased, even if only slightly. After the meal, the humans shared more about Earth, its forests, its rivers, its people of many cultures. He spoke of hardships and struggles, but also of joy, music, and hope. The translator worked better now, and fewer mistakes twisted his meaning. The princesses listened, slowly realizing that behind the fearsome rumors, humans were more complex than they had believed. When the session ended, the sisters returned to their chamber. The air between them was heavy with thought. Sarai broke the silence first. He admits his nature, yet he hides nothing. Could it be that honesty is his weapon? That he disarms us with truth instead of lies? Myra clutched her hands together. When he spoke of balance, I almost believed him. For a moment I saw not a predator but someone who lives as we do, struggling, choosing, hoping. Leora stood by the window watching the stars beyond. Her voice was calm but thoughtful. Perhaps we were wrong to see only the predator. Perhaps there is more between his words, something we must learn to hear. The three sisters shared a long silence. The meeting had not erased their fear, but it had changed it. What they saw now was not only danger, but mystery. And for the first time they wondered if the truth about humans was not horror, but something far greater. The palace garden was filled with soft light as the twin moons rose above the crystal towers. The three princesses walked together along the glowing paths, their gowns brushing against the grass-like plants that shimmered in the night. Their hearts were unsettled, still turning over the strange things they had heard from the human. Leora spoke first, her voice calm but thoughtful. He did not lie to us. He showed us his food, even the part that frightened us most. That means he values honesty more than comfort. Sarai frowned, hugging her cloak tightly. Or perhaps he is clever enough to use honesty as a weapon. By speaking openly, he makes us lower our guard. We think he is harmless. And then she shivered and left the rest unsaid. Myra shook her head slowly. But when he spoke of balance, I felt he believed it. His eyes, they did not look cruel. They looked sad, as if carrying heavy memories. The sisters stopped beneath a tall crystal tree whose branches glowed with pale blue light. They stood in silence, thinking of the humans' words. Something about him did not fit the stories told by fearful nobles. He was different. Dangerous, yes, but not in the way they had expected. The next day they were summoned again, this time for a private audience. No nobles, no guards, only the three princesses, their father the emperor, and Daniel Carter, the human ambassador. The chamber was smaller, filled with soft cushions and tapestries instead of armor and spears. It felt less like a throne room and more like a space for truth. Daniel bowed politely. Your Majesty and honored princesses, thank you for allowing me this chance to speak more closely. I wish for you to see beyond fear, to understand not just my words but my people. The emperor nodded, folding his hands. Then speak, human. Show my daughters what lies beneath the surface of your kind. Daniel looked at the three sisters, his eyes steady but gentle. What you have heard of humans is true in parts, but twisted in others. Yes, we eat plants and meat. Yes, we have fought wars. But that is not all we are. If you look only at the teeth, you miss the hand that builds. If you look only at the fight, you miss the voice that sings. The translator spoke clearly, carrying his meaning without error this time. The princesses felt the weight of his words. Leora leaned forward slightly. Then tell us, Daniel of Earth, what do your people value most, if not power? Daniel was quiet for a moment, as if choosing carefully. Then he said, We value hope. We value the chance to make tomorrow better than today. Even when our world was hard, even when survival was painful, we dreamed of more. That is what carried us to the stars. Not strength, not hunger, but hope. The chamber grew silent. The emperor's eyes narrowed, but not in anger, rather in thought. The princesses looked at one another, their fear slowly shifting into something else. Sarai's voice trembled, but it was not only fear now. Hope, But predators do not hope. Predators only take. Daniel smiled softly, not showing too much of his teeth. Then perhaps we are not what you think. Perhaps we are both, predator and dreamer, strong and fragile, dangerous, but also kind. That is why you must see between the lines of what you hear. The sisters sat stunned. His words touched something deep in them. The emperor ended the meeting soon after, but the princesses could not forget what had been said. That night, in their private chamber, they spoke in hushed voices. Myra was the first to speak. Did you... See how he spoke. Not as one who demands, but as one who carries a burden. He did not sound like a conqueror. Sarai sat by the window, staring at the moons. But he is still dangerous. His kind eats flesh, fights wars, survives against nature itself. Such a people could rise above all others. Leora walked slowly across the room, her hands folded. Yes, but that is why they are remarkable. To survive weakness with cleverness. To carry both predators' hunger and dreamers' hope. That balance is rare. That balance is powerful. The sisters grew silent again, each lost in thought. The next day they joined Daniel once more, this time in the learning hall. There he showed them images projected from a small device, a human invention called a hollow tablet. Pictures floated in the air, forests, mountains, oceans, cities with tall towers of glass and steel. The princesses gasped softly at the sight. Earth was vast, filled with beauty, but also hardship. Daniel explained patiently. We have lived through storms, famines, and wars. We have faced hunger and sickness, yet always we endured. Always we found a way forward. Not because we are the strongest, but because we refuse to surrender, Leora whispered almost to herself. Endurance, not strength. That is their secret. Daniel nodded as if hearing her. Yes, many species survive because they are fast or strong or armored. Humans survived because we would not stop trying, even when everything was against us. The sisters felt their fear slowly turning into something else. Respect, perhaps, though they did not yet admit it. When the lesson ended, Daniel bowed once more. I thank you for listening. Perhaps one day you will judge us not by rumors but by truth. After he left, the sisters sat together, quiet but thoughtful. Myra's eyes were wide with wonder. Do you think maybe he is right? Maybe we should not see only the predator? Sarai hesitated, her heart torn. I do not know, but I cannot deny that his words carry weight. He speaks not only of hunger but of hope, and that is harder to fear. Leora placed a hand on each of her sister's shoulders. Her voice was calm and strong. Then let us watch carefully. Let us listen closely. Let us see not just what he says, but what lies between the lines. Only then will we know who humans truly are. The moons rose higher, casting silver light across the chamber. For the first time since the rumors began, the princesses did not feel only dread. They felt something new, a curiosity that might one day grow into trust. The story of the Carnivorous. Human was no longer simple. It was no longer a tale of monsters. It was something deeper, something far harder to name. And the three sisters knew that the next days would reveal the answer that all the galaxy waited for. The great hall of the empire was alive with whispers. Nobles, ministers, generals, and scholars filled the chamber. The air was tense, for this was the day the emperor's daughters would give their judgment on the strange visitor, the human, named Daniel Carter. The emperor sat high upon the crystal throne, his robe heavy with silver and violet patterns. His eyes were sharp, watching not only his guest but also his daughters, who had spent many days in private meetings with the human. The court wanted answers. Was this carnivorous creature to be trusted? Or was he a hidden danger to their world? Daniel stood calmly before them, dressed in a simple dark uniform with the insignia of Earth's alliance. He carried no weapon, no armor, only a quiet strength. His eyes moved across the crowd, then rested on the three princesses. Leora, the eldest, stepped forward first. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. We have listened. We have questioned. We have watched. And now, we speak. The chamber grew silent. She continued. When we first met Daniel of Earth, we feared him. We saw him only as a predator, a creature who eats flesh and survives through strength and violence. But that was only the surface. Sarai, the second princess, rose next. Her sharp eyes swept the nobles, who leaned in with curiosity. What we found instead was something more complex. Humans are indeed dangerous, but not because of teeth or claws. They are dangerous because they endure. They fall, and they rise again. They suffer, and still they hope. They are not monsters, but survivors. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. Some whispered in disbelief, others in awe. Finally, Myra, the youngest, spoke, her voice gentle but filled with wonder. And more than survival, they dream. Daniel showed us a world where beauty and pain live side by side. He showed us music, stories, and laughter. If you look only at what they eat, you see only fear. But if you look deeper, you see builders, dreamers, and friends. The court grew restless. Some nobles shook their heads, unwilling to believe. Others stared at the human with newfound curiosity. The emperor lifted a hand, silencing the chamber. His gaze fell on his daughters. You speak well, but words are easy. Tell me this. Why should we trust him? Why should we not see humans as a threat waiting to grow? The three sisters stood together, their voices joining as one. Because, Father, trust is not given to the harmless. Trust is given to those who could harm, yet choose peace. Daniel could have deceived us with false comfort. But instead, he gave us truth, even when it frightened us. That is the mark of one who seeks friendship, not conquest. The emperor's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to Daniel. Human, you hear their words. Tell us now, why should this empire open its gates to your kind? Speak not to impress, but to prove. Daniel took a slow breath, stepping forward. His voice was calm, but every syllable carried weight. Because we do not come as rulers, we come as equals. We have known hunger, war, and loss, just as you have. We know the fear of the dark, the pain of mistakes, the cost of survival. And because of that, we value peace all the more. If you accept us, we will not bring chains or blades. We will bring hands that build, voices that teach, and hearts that dream. His words echoed in the chamber. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. An elder noble, one who had long warned against humans, rose from his seat. Dangerous, he muttered loudly enough for all to hear. They are dangerous beyond measure. But perhaps... His eyes softened, filled with reluctant respect. Perhaps that is why they may also become great allies. A ripple of agreement spread through the hall. Fear was still there, but it was no longer the only emotion. Curiosity, respect, and even hope had joined it. The emperor raised his hand once more. Then it is decided. The judgment of my daughters and the voice of my court will guide me. Daniel Carter of Earth, the Empire will not cast you out. Instead, we will open the path to alliance. But remember this, trust, once given, must be honored. Do not let your people betray this gift. Daniel bowed deeply. I give you my word. Humans are not perfect, but we will strive to honor your trust. The chamber filled with sound, whispers, applause, the shifting tide of history. Later that night, beneath the glowing moons, the three sisters walked together once more in the garden. They were quiet, each lost in her own thoughts. Finally, Myra broke the silence. "Do you think he truly means it? That his people can bring hope instead of harm?" Leora smiled faintly. "I think he does, and I think we will see for ourselves. The truth of humanity will not be found in fear or in rumor, but in the choices they make." Sarai folded her arms, though her voice was softer than before. "They are still dangerous. But perhaps danger is not always a curse. Sometimes it is a spark that lights the dark." The sisters looked up at the twin moons, their hearts filled with something new. Not fear, not dread, but a cautious, growing hope. And in that moment, the galaxy itself seemed to shift. For where once the story had been of carnivorous monsters, now it became something else entirely. It became the story of humanity, not defined by hunger, but by resilience, by dreams, and by the strange, fragile power of hope. The meeting that had once been dreaded was now remembered as the beginning of something greater. The day three alien princesses looked beyond fear and saw humanity for what it truly was.